Namaste, nerds. This is Navanad, your friendly neighborhood bracket pub stomper. I'm kidding. It's the budget pub stomper, and today we're going to be just weighing in on WotC's recent development, recent announcement, the Commander brackets beta edition. And I'll say that I am kind of personally happy that it is the beta. And keep that in mind, guys. Take this with a grain. Let's be let's be a little bit nice about this. Let's not get too up in arms and understand that this is just kind of their first take at it. Took them long enough to come out with a first beta take. But I think, even though I think we do want to be, we want to be kind and understanding and take this with a grain. We want to look at this whole thing charitably. But at the same time, this is beta, and being a beta test situation, they at least implicitly, and I'd say they probably literally do, want constructive feedback. And so that's a lot of what I've prepared to talk about today is just some constructive feedback. Now, first of all, first and foremost, my channel is about budget competitive Commander. And so I ought to probably start by saying, how do I think this is going to affect us? How do I think it's going to affect like 100 max competitive Commander? And in short, I think it's just not going to. This isn't going to have an impact on us. If you hop into a budget Commander tournament, I don't think this is going to matter very much, if at all. Probably not at all. I mean, unless somebody explicitly says we're going to do a bracket 3 tournament, but I think there'd be problems even trying to do that right now, and maybe we'll talk about some of those. So, you know, I'm just a little bit disappointed. I know it's beta. I know it's not done. Nothing's set in stone yet. I'm happy about that, but it's not what I was hoping. So when I heard about the announcement, what was I hoping for, right? Well, I was hoping that there would be rules for Wizards of the Coast's Magic the Gathering's most popular way to play. I thought we'd have like codified. I thought we'd have like actual rules in place. And I think we're still kind of in this like this rules no man land. There's going to be kind of quasi unspoken, somewhat spoken, semi-spoken kind of rules, but not really sort of stuff that just doesn't resonate with me, and I think people like me. And so I think maybe Wizards missed an opportunity. I was actually looking forward to building like a bracket 3 deck, and then like really so to me and to people like me, I think this is like Commander is about deck building and optimizing and trying to make your deck as good as you can over many iterations. You build a deck, you play it, you tweak it, you try to make it better and better and better, and you keep powering it up, and that's what's fun about it for a lot of us. I like brewing decks, and I like tweaking them, and I like trying to make them as good as I can make them given the set of rules that we're working with. And I don't really feel like that's an opportunity that we've been afforded with these sort of, I hate to say flaky, but we'll say like ethereal kind of, I don't know, not very coarse rules. And maybe, you know, some people could look at that as a feature, not a bug. To me, it's mostly bug and very little feature. Well, maybe we should read the brackets. And there is more to this than just this list right here. You know, there's some context that you should read into also. I don't think you guys tuned in to listen to me read the same thing you've heard everybody else read or that you've read yourself. But maybe we should just go through this real quick. Exhibition level, so bracket 1, ultra casual Commander decks. No mass land denial or extra turns. No 2-card infinite combos. No game changers. And if you don't know, game changers are the right now 40 cards that they've deemed to be game changers. And the game changer thing doesn't really matter for 1 or 2. They're more like just a banned list for levels 1 and 2. And then for 4 and 5, they don't matter either, because if they're not literally on the banned list, you're allowed to play whichever ones you want and as many of them as you'd like. But really, I think the game changers matter the most for bracket 3, and I get the impression that's where they think most players are going to hang out and play, is at this bracket 3, and that may end up being the case. We'll have to see. Time will tell. But core, we already read that, didn't we? Well, if I read 1, I basically read 2, because 1 and 2 are the same, except what was the one tiny little change? By the letter of the law here, the only change in the rules, the exact rules, no chaining extra turns. No. Yeah. Okay, so in bracket 1, there are no extra turn spells allowed, which I think is just sort of, I don't know, seems a little bit arbitrary. Like, are extra turn spells that big of a deal? I don't know. Maybe they could have put them on. Neither here nor there. The only difference that I can see between 1 and 2, aside from like the spirit of this, I don't know. Aside from the mind, the mind state, I don't know, the more ethereal rule 0 type stuff. The only like strict rule difference is that you are allowed to use extra turn spells in bracket 2 as long as you're not planning on chaining them or recurring them, I guess. But number 3 is where you're allowed to use exactly 3 game changers. So number 3 I think is probably the most interesting. I mean, I obviously prefer 4 and 5, but I'd say number 3 is it's the one that makes the most sense to me. There actually is like at least some kind of definitive rule set here, where you've got this list of game changer cards. There's 40 super powerful cards, and you're only allowed to play 3 of them in your 100 cards. Still no mass land denial, no chaining extra turns, and this thing I kind of don't love, where it says late game 2-card infinite combos are okay. But nowhere does it define what late game actually means. And then 4 is optimized. High power commander, it's time to go wild. There's no restrictions other than the banned list. And 5 is CDH, which is also just high power with no restrictions other than the banned list. So I don't know. I don't see these as actually 2 separate things, and I don't know why you would. Like, I guess if you're playing a deck that has more than 3 game changers, but it's not a CEDH deck, then I guess you have to have a place to play that, and you'd play that in optimized. But according to the letter of the law here, the only difference between optimized and CEDH is whether or not you have a mindset towards tournament play. It's like you're supposed to be paying attention to a metagame. No pet cards, you're trying to build the best thing possible. So what I learned from this is that I don't play CEDH. Apparently I play high power because I don't play. I play the decks that I like to play, and I try to make them as powerful as I can do. But I think that would fall into 4. I just don't think there is a 4 and a 5. I think they're the same thing. So where did they succeed? Did they succeed at anything? I don't know. I think it could be useful. This could be useful for casual players to kind of help with their Rule 0 conversation. But I think they're still going to have a Rule 0 conversation. So I don't know. Maybe it's I guess maybe the place where it succeeded is that it's better than literally nothing, which is what we had before, where people would just say, I'm a 7, I'm a 6, or whatever. So I guess it's better than literally nothing, but I mean, maybe it is. But I'd say it's better than literal nothing, except that it could be used as a way to justify pub stomping, which I think is a fear I have, and that a fear that probably we ought to have. I think it's a real thing that could happen. Now I've got personal frustrations, like I think I mentioned, I was hoping when this came out so late that they would actually have, hired game designers, intelligent people that know Magic, and they'd sit down and actually make rules to govern the game, the format that is the most popular way to play in all of Magic the Gathering, and I just don't feel like they actually did that. I was looking forward to a format where it would make sense for me to just beat people to death with Eldrazi, or like put together some kind of crazy landfall BS, or I don't know, an infect deck, or maybe there'd be like some sort of a viable Voltron deck that I could find a way to play. I've tried to play in casual pods, and it's just never gone well for me. It's like, I don't know, it's too much salt in that place. It's like the way that I feel like a lot of casual pods handle the rules. It's something like I ask, well, what are the rules? And they're sort of like, well, we're not going to tell you, but we are going to get super salty if you break them. And I think a lot of people, it's like the rules are, if you do anything that's more powerful than the things I'm doing, then that's bad, and you should feel ashamed. So yeah, I don't know. So I've been off of non-CDH or budget competitive for a long time, sticking to budget comp and just pure CDH, just because I don't want to feel ashamed when I win, you know? So I don't know. In my opinion, I think the beta didn't get there. I think that if I were to sit down and try to build the very best bracket 3 deck that I can, I think it's still going to be a combo deck. And honestly, I think that's still true for 2 and 1. So I think they failed. That's what I think. But it's a beta test, and so this is my feedback, and hopefully they'll take the feedback, and hopefully other people will see things kind of the way I see it, and they'll get this all ironed out. I know they've got some sharp people working at the, whatever they call it, the Commander Advisory Group or whatever. But yeah, no, I think combo still seems to be the way to win in Commander. You might have to be a little bit more, I don't know, you have to be a little more picky about how you do that. I think I don't know, I think the rules are too wishy-washy and ethereal. I think brackets 1 and 2 are they just don't need to be 2 brackets. It's like the only thing that changes between 1 and 2 by the letter of the law is no extra turns in bracket 1, but in bracket 2 you're allowed to have extra turns as long as you don't chain them. I mean, that seems like the same bracket. And bracket 4 and 5 just literally are the same bracket. I mean, you know, I play in CDH pods weekly, and people will sit down and they'll play like high power at best build of Animar, and they'll win some, or they'll, you know, we almost lost a game to Wall's tribal deck. So those would be what I'd call high powered decks, but they sit down in the CDH pod, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem to have any real distinction. I mean, I guess if I just say, here's my CDH deck, then it's a CDH deck. But if I say, well, I'm not really looking towards a tournament format, I'm playing cards I like instead of just playing the deck that I think is the best, then maybe I'm in high power. But I think almost every the vast majority of CDH players are not playing the deck that they think is the best. They're playing the deck that they enjoy the most. So yeah, I think a lot of fails. Now, I want to get into something. I have something I want to show you guys, but I wanted to weigh in on the brackets, but then I want to show you something that I think is kind of funny. I want to show you my bracket 1 deck. Now, I want to start by saying I had this budget Magda deck that absolutely is tuned to murder the table on turn 4. And I didn't do anything with the brackets. I just checked at Moxfield to see what they had me bracketed as, and it was a bracket 2 deck according to Moxfield. Now, I did get to work on trying to figure out what made it a 2, not a 1, and I found out that it was just 1 card. Now, the 1 card was oddly, what was it? Flare of Duplication. So I just had to move Flare of Duplication out of my budget Magda deck, and it became, all of a sudden, it became a bracket 1 deck. So according to Moxfield, estimated bracket is 1. There's not more than, well, there's not 3 tutors. In fact, there's no tutors in the deck. There's Magda, so the deck becomes kind of a tutor. There's no 2-card win conditions or no 2-card infinites. There's no A plus B wins. No, well, they don't even say that you're not allowed to use fast mana. There's no game changers, I guess I'll put it that way. I mean, so some of this just doesn't make sense, right? Like, for example, before we get into this Magda deck, Bolas's Citadel is considered a game changer, right? So it's not supposed to be played in 1 or 2. And it's pointed, so to speak, in bracket 3. However, I could use Dark Ritual into turn 1 Necropotence in bracket 1. And as long as I'm not assembling a 2-card infinite, then that's just fine and dandy. Or, in one of these casual brackets, I can't play Bolas's Citadel, or if I'm playing in bracket 3, I can play that, but only 3 game changers. But in bracket 1 or 2, I could use Beseech the Mirror to get Animate Dead, and then animate my Hoarding Broodlord to get Saw in Half, and then Convoke Cast the Saw in Half on the Hoarding Broodlord. And then when I get my 2 Broodlord tokens, I could find Sacrifice and Peer into the Abyss and tap the Hoarding Broodlord token to Convoke Cast the Sacrifice, and then tap the other one to help cast the PETA, Peer into the Abyss, draw half of the deck, and as long as I'm not accessing a 2-card infinite, seems to me like I'm still within the rules. So I don't know, I draw half my deck and put together a 3-card infinite. You see what I mean? Like, the rules just, I think they need some work. I mean, and I know it's not going to be perfect, right? Like, we can't expect it to be I don't know, like, can we not expect it to be perfect? I guess we can't expect it to be perfect, but geez, like, it's like the biggest, as far as I know, the biggest TCG. We're talking about Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, Magic the Gathering. Like, I don't know if I buy that we couldn't expect something to be at least closer to perfect. I mean, WotC could probably have, I don't know, hired intelligent people that are knowledgeable game designers that know CDH and know Commander and know game design, and they probably could create rules for their casual Commander, like rules that actually force somebody like me, even if I'm trying to optimize my deck, to end up turning creatures sideways and going to a beatdown plan. I don't think it would be that damn hard to do. I think I could tackle it in like a long weekend. Give me a few buddies and for sure I could, or we could. So I just can't believe that Wizards of the Coast could not have done better than this. Yeah, so that's kind of I'm not trying to be whiny about it, but I do want to show some of the places where I think this has failed. And here's just a very simple thing. Like, this is a pretty complicated system they've got going here. But if you've ever played on Spell Table and you've looked to get into a lobby and you saw a casual pod forming, they'll just put the words, no fast mana and no infinite combos. Or sometimes it'll be no fast mana, no infinites, no procs, no mox. Something like that, right? And like, that's just a few sentences, and I think it does a better job than this bracket system, and I think that's kind of crazy. Not trying to shame the design team, but like, seriously, if we just said you're not allowed to play fast mana, you're not allowed to play infinite combos, maybe we say there's no alternate win conditions, then doesn't that just get us closer to where we want to be as, not we, but to where, doesn't that get you closer to where you want to be as a casual Commander player? No fast mana, like no mana positive rocks. So no fast mana, no infinites period, and no alternate win conditions. Or maybe no alternate win conditions with a couple exceptions. Commander damage and infect, maybe they're fine. Or maybe not, And I just think that gets us closer to what we should have had as a bracket 2. And then you could say, like, keep the game changers in if you like them. And put the, no infinite combos, period. No fast mana. And here's the game changers. You don't get access to any of the game changers until bracket 3. And, like, done, right? Isn't that better and kind of simpler? And then like get rid of 4 and 5. Like if you want to play with unlimited game changers, then you play with unlimited game changers. I think that's another thing that I'll say personally I think is a benefit. One thing I do think they kind of got right, but I'll say maybe sort of by accident, is that they've pretty much made it canon that high power and CDH are the same thing, which I've always kind of thought that anyway. Like you can take a high power deck, and like what's the difference between what's the difference between a fringe CDH deck and a good high power deck? Like nothing, right? I don't know. So those are some of my thoughts, but I want to show you this deck too. This was one of the things maybe I should have led with this. This might be the thing that my viewers would find the most interesting. This is my estimated bracket 1. Bracket 1 budget CDH Magda. Now this is still $93.58. And let's take a look at how this thing plays. Let me take a look at the time. 20 minutes, fine. We've got time. So what do we have here? If you're not familiar with the Magda combos, basically, there's a couple of them. I mean, there's lots of ways to actually end the game. But the main combo in the deck is going to be using Magda to tutor up a couple of pieces. You want, where is it? I'm going to collapse these so they don't get in the way. Clock of Omens. So we tutor out our Clock of Omens, and then we tutor out an artifact that is also a dwarf that is also an artifact. Or we have one of our dwarves, like Dwarven Trader, and we use one of our, I don't know, like Liquid Metal Torque. Tap this, target permanent becomes an artifact in addition to its other types until end of turn. Now we have an artifact dwarf. So if we have Clock of Omens in play with Magda and with Liquid Metal Coating, and we tap the Liquid Metal Coating to turn Magda into an artifact, well, now she's an artifact. So you can tap 2 artifacts, so that would be Clock of Omens and Magda, to get an untap trigger that will untap target artifact. Well, the artifact you're going to untap with that untap trigger is Magda. But once you tap the Magda, Magda says anytime a dwarf becomes tapped, make a treasure token. So you tap your artifact dwarf, Magda. You tap the Clock of Omens itself to get an untap. When you tap Magda, you make an untapped treasure. The untap trigger untaps Magda. So now you have untapped Magda, untapped treasure. Now you use the Clock of Omens ability by tapping the untapped treasure token and the untapped Magda, who has to be a dwarf and an artifact. And then you get another untap trigger and another make a treasure token. You tapped Magda, that makes a treasure, it comes in untapped. Your untapped trigger goes on Magda, untaps Magda, and now you've got an extra treasure that's tapped, but then you've got one untapped treasure and untapped Magda. You tap the untapped treasure and the Magda to get an untap. When you tap the Magda, that makes an untapped treasure token. The untapped trigger goes off and untaps Magda, and again you've got untapped Magda, untapped treasure, and now you've got another tapped treasure token. And you just keep doing that as many times as you need to, and then you just sacrifice as many treasure tokens as you need, because this second ability or bottom ability of Magda says sacrifice 5 treasure tokens, search your library for an artifact or a dragon card, put that card onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. It does not say sacrifice 5 untapped treasure tokens. So all of these infinite tapped treasure tokens can be sacrificed to tutor out any artifact or any dragon from your deck. And there's lots of ways to finish the game from there. Maybe the simplest way, or one of the simplest ways, would be to tutor out the Skargan Hellkite. No, you know what? Here, this is going to be the simplest way, I think. Bark Form Harvester. You tutor out your... that's a little complicated. The deck does get a little bit complicated in the ways it chooses to actually win. Well, let's just say we've got infinite tapped treasure tokens, so we're going to sacrifice 5 of them to find an artifact. This will be easy. We'll get our... what the hell is it called? Maskwood Nexus. Now, we put this in play. Creatures you control are every creature type. That includes dragon and dwarf. And it says the same is true for creature spells you control and creature cards you own that aren't on the battlefield. So that means all of your creatures that are in your deck are now dragons, so that you can tutor out any creatures that you want. So once you've got the Maskwood Nexus and Infinite Treasures and your Magda in play, well, now you can just grab, I don't know, one of these treasure boosters, Zorn. So Zorn is a dragon. So you tutor out your Zorn by sacrificing 5 more of your infinite treasures. Now you start the loop up again where you're making all these tapped treasure tokens, but this says, Zorn says, if you'd create 1 or more treasure tokens, you're going to create an extra one, and that one will be untapped. So now while we're making infinite tapped treasures, we're also making infinite untapped treasures, and then we use 5 of our infinite treasures to find Skargan Hellkite. It's a dragon, comes into play, and it has Riot. You can either give it haste, which you're never going to do, or you can put a +1 counter on it. If you put the +1 counter, then it has this ability underneath that says pay 4 mana, and it deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Activate this ability only if it's got the +1 counter. So we've ended up with infinite mana, and we've got our Skargan Hellkite in play, and we can pump our infinite mana by sacrificing our untapped treasures that we got from Zorn to burn out the table. So that's a way to win. There's also ways to, like, you can use Bark Form Harvester's ability to pay 2 mana to put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. The card that you're going to be putting is going to be, it could be multiple things. The way I chose to do it with this build is Pyrite Spellbomb. It's an artifact, so you can tutor it out with Magda. You can sacrifice it to deal 2 damage to a player. Then it goes into your graveyard. Then you use the Bark Form Harvester, which by the way is an artifact and a dwarf. And you use the ability 2 mana, put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. You put the Pyrite Spellbomb on the bottom of your library, and now you can tutor it back into play with Magda because it's in your library. Then you sacrifice it, deal 2 damage to somebody, it goes in the graveyard. You use your Bark Form Harvester to put that on the bottom of your library, which means you can tutor it out again with Magda, which means you can burn somebody again, so on and so forth. Now, is this really a bracket 1 deck? Well, according to the absolute rules, it definitely is, and according to Moxfield, it definitely is. See, it says right here, bracket 1. Now, it means it has no 2-card combos, no game changers, no mass land denial, no extra turns, and it has up to 3 tutors. And the only tutor in the deck it's counting is Magda. So according to that, yeah, this is the only place where you could argue and say, well, maybe this isn't a level 1 or even a level 2, is because you're not supposed to be able to combo off early in the game. But if we take a real close look at the rules here, I think what you're going to see, if I'm not mistaken, big splashy turns, built in ways that work. While the game is unlikely to win out of nowhere and generally goes 9 or more turns, you can expect big swings. There's a specific, maybe it's here. Yeah, okay, so these decks should generally not have any 2-card infinite combos that can happen cheaply. And then about the first 6 or so turns of the game. But it's possible the long game could end with one being deployed, even out of nowhere. So definitely we can fit this into bracket 3. First of all, this is talking about 2-card infinite combos. Magda doesn't have a 2-card infinite combo. So this says, yes, you can do a 2-card infinite combo as long as it can't happen cheaply, and as long as it doesn't happen until the turn 6 or whatever. Well, so a couple things. Magda's not using a 2-card combo. There aren't any 2-card. You didn't hear me talk about any 2-card combos. We need multiple pieces. And also, the best way to play Magda is generally going to be, even if you were trying to play it as perfectly as possible, you're rarely going to be trying to win super early in the game. The best way to play the deck, honestly, because some of the strengths of the Magda archetype would be that the deck can win at instant speed, and it can win out of nowhere, and it can win without casting spells. Well, I don't know that the loops... Yeah, I guess I did talk about some loops that win without casting spells, like the Skargan Hellkite thing. Once you've got enough treasures in play, you can win just with activating things. You don't have to cast any spells. You can win through Rule of Law. But most importantly, you can and should win on top of somebody else's win attempt. That's the best time to win with Magda. That's one of the things that makes her so broken. So even if you're playing this totally optimally, you're never going to be trying to just speed out and turbo, or certainly it's not something you have to do. You can play the deck in an optimal way that doesn't even attempt to win until somebody else is already attempting to win. Now, that's not something you would do just to skirt the rules. And again, this isn't a turn 2 combo. Or I'm sorry, this isn't. It's not a 2-card combo. No 2-card combos. There's no 2 cards you can put together that win the game. You need more pieces than that. But you're also not trying to win fast. You're trying to win second. I mean, you're going to try to win first, but you're winning in response to somebody who is already trying to win the game. So if there's a turn 6 combo player in the pod, you're going to wait, and once that player says, okay, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to win the game, you say, okay, in response to you winning the game, I'm going to sacrifice these 10 treasures, I'm going to put this in play, I'm going to put this in play. And they say, okay, well, I'm going to counter this, or I'm going to blow that up. And you say, okay, well, in response to that, I'm going to sacrifice these 10 treasures, or these 5 treasures, and I'm going to keep trying to win the game over top of you. So literally the best way to play Magda usually is going to be to wait until somebody else tries to win the game. So you're not going to be trying to race people with the deck. And you're certainly not going to be trying to race people with the deck with a 2-card combo, because there are no 2-card combos in the deck. And if you don't believe it, check the Mox field here. Right there, it says no 2-card combos. So yeah, let's maybe, if we've got a little bit more time. Oh, and Battered Golem is good. Yeah, this isn't a deck. I'm not going to tell you about the bat. So there's some ways that one of the big difficulties people used to have with playing this deck is that it used to kind of be the case that if somebody blew up, exiled, I should say, if somebody got rid of even Clock of Omens, the deck was in pretty rough shape. But we've got pieces now, and we've found new tech to make the deck very capable of winning. Even if your Clock gets exiled, you can use Karn to get it back. And Karn is not mass land anything. It just shuts off mana rocks. So you can return from exile your Maskwood Nexus or your Clock. If something gets just murdered, put into the graveyard, you can get it back with Bark Form Harvester. But even if you're in total dire straits and you can't find your Karn, or it's been exiled, and your Clock has been exiled, you still can win the game with Battered Golem, Magda, and Maskwood Nexus. So Maskwood Nexus says that your all of your creatures are dragons, and all of your creatures are also I was going to say pirates. I play Malcolm a lot. Dwarves. So Maskwood Nexus says that this homie right here is a dwarf. So Battered Golem does not untap during your untap step, but it does untap anytime an artifact comes into play. So if you have Magda and you have the battered golem in play, and you've got your Masquid Nexus in play, so the battered golem, in fact, is a is a dwarf. It's everything. Then when you tap the battered golem and some other artifact, maybe you've got a vehicle. We play a lot of vehicles, or maybe you've got a springleaf drum. You have to have some ways to tap these dudes. So let's just say you've got clown car in play. You're gonna tap. You've got clown car, and it doesn't even matter. Universal automaton or whatever. Metallic mimic. You've got battered golem, something else, and your clown car. So you're gonna tap the battered golem and your whatever dwarven trader. It doesn't matter. You're tapping two things. One of them has to be battered golem. To what is it called, to activate the clown car, to crew the clown car. So when you tap the battered golem, since the Masquid Nexus says it's a dwarf, and since Magda says when you tap a dwarf it makes a treasure, well, you make a treasure. Well, battered golem says that when an artifact comes into play, you untap the battered golem. So you untap the battered golem because the treasure came into play. Now you've got untapped battered golem, untapped treasure, and you can kind of see where this is going, right? So let's get into some playtest hands, and let's see how this thing kind of works as a lowly bracket 1 deck. Where's the playtester? Playtest. Discard. Start. Alright, so this would be a pretty good second 7 here. We'll draw for turn. We were hoping for a land, but we'll take that. Hard to know exactly where to start here, honestly. I think we'd go turn 1. I mean, the temptation is to always do turn 1 Soul Ring, but maybe we'd go turn 1. We really need that land. Now let's throw a 1-mana dwarf in play. Yeah, not good. Not great. There's our turn 2. Next turn. Alright, finally we're going to be able to play our Magda. Got one colorless floating. Magda's in play. We'll tap this to tap that to make 1 mana. So we've got 1 red mana floating and a treasure. We're just going to use whatever the top token is. That's a treasure. 1 red mana floating. We're going to tap our Magda to tap this to make another red. So now we've got 2 red. That is also going to make a treasure. Just whatever tokens, these are treasures. And with our 2 red, we're going to get, just a couple more dwarves in play. And if we do have any open lane, we can attack with this guy, and we'll make a treasure. And we will go to our next turn, which will be turn 4. There's a land. Alright, so now, if we can go to combat and attack with all these guys, we're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 treasures. If we want to play it a little bit more safe, we can tap this to tap this. That makes a treasure and a red mana. And we've got 1 red floating. We'll tap this and this to make another red and make another treasure. And with that 2 red, we'll put this dwarf into play. And maybe we can go to combat. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, we're there, right? Like, now this is just the point where we have our artifact dwarf in play, and we have 5 treasure tokens. Now we're not literally going to go off and win right now. Now we might, if we have open lanes and we can attack with all of our dwarves, We could attack with 1, 2, 3 dwarfs and make 3 more treasures. Then maybe we'd put our God Pharaoh statue into play. But really, now that we're just at a point where we have an artifact dwarf in play, we've got 5 treasures in play, probably the ability to make more if we need more. We've got now we've got the luxury of time. Now we can just wait, and we wait, and we wait, and we wait. And as soon as somebody tries to win the game, we say, all right, even if we've made no more treasures, which we will have, but let's just say somebody is also playing a more optimized bracket 1 deck, and they try to do like a 10 mana combo that they dark ritualed, because all the rituals are fine, and they necroed into, and they found their 3-card combo, their 10 mana 3-card combo with their necropotence and their 4 rituals or whatever, and they're like, okay, I'm going to win the game with this whatever. And you say, okay, well, in response to that, I'm going to crack 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 treasure tokens to activate Magda's tutor ability. And we are going to find Clock of Omens. Okay, now Clock of Omens is in play, and this is all in response to our opponent trying to win the game. We are going to tap an artifact and another artifact. That artifact is a changeling, artifact shapeshifter. So this is a dwarf, so that's going to make us a treasure token. And we've got an untap trigger because we tapped the Clock of Omens and we tapped the Universal Automaton. That's 2 artifacts being tapped to give us an untap, because Clock of Omens says tap 2 untapped artifacts to untap an artifact. Now the artifact we're going to untap is going to be right here. Now we have 2 untapped artifacts. We're going to tap them with the Clock of Omens to get an untap. Well, we just tapped a dwarf, so we made another token, another treasure, and we activated the clock, so we get an untap. We're going to untap this, and now we have 2 untapped artifacts. We're going to tap the 2 untapped artifacts. Oh, that's a dwarf. That got tapped. We're going to make a token, and our untap is going to go here. And we're going to tap these to make a treasure, to untap this, and so on and so forth. And we're going to make infinite tapped treasure tokens, which means infinite tutors. And we'll go through one of the lines that I already talked about. There's plenty of other lines. And now in real gameplay, while you're playing this deck, if we had the same kind of run out that I just had, most likely we would have had 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 treasures produced before, like more treasures, additional treasures produced before anybody was able to win the game, in which case we can just tutor out specific pieces to stop our opponent from winning. Like we sacrificed 5 treasures to grab Disruptor Flute, and we put that directly into the battlefield without casting a spell. And it says when it comes into play, choose a card name. So we choose whatever card was about to kill us or win the game or whatever. It says spells with the chosen name cost 3 more to cast. Activated abilities of sources with the chosen name can't be activated unless they're mana abilities. So somebody was going to try and do something crazy, but we pulled this off at instant speed without casting a spell. They can't counterspell it, and stopped them. Or if our God Pharaoh statue was, maybe we just played that at some point, and then maybe they all just scoop. Or if there's a storm deck that's trying to do like a fair bracket 1, bracket 2 storm, and this was in the deck, we could drop 5 treasures to sacrifice this and put this into play. Spells your opponent's cast cost 2 more to cast. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses 1 life. So good luck storming through that. Good luck doing much of anything through that. And there's other little hate pieces in here. We can find... sometimes it'll just be Pyrite Spellbomb to blow up there, whatever. I was going to say Kinnan, but nope. That's... Kinnan was dealt with. Kinnan is not in this. probably one of our dragons. We put our Skargan Hellkite into play and just start burning everybody's dudes out. I know I've got tons of maybe Thorn of Amethyst. That would be a good stacks piece. Maybe we had to move that to the battlefield before we could win. Just slow our opponents down, buy us time. Pithing Needle. It's another one. Somebody's got a Thrasios, I think is legal in brackets 1 and 2. So we would move Pithing Needle to play and say your Thrasios doesn't do anything. So hopefully you get the idea. Our Bullgarden Hellkite, somebody's establishing a big board. They've got like a 3/3 and 2 1/1s that are getting them a bunch of value or that are about to form a combo. They bring the last combo piece out. We sacrifice 5 treasures and we move Bullgarden Hellkite into play with Magda's ability. It says when it enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage divided as we choose among any number of target creatures and or players. So yeah, that's another thing we could do. You get the idea. So this is a bracket 1 deck according to the letter of the law, which to me says they need to get back to work on the letters that go into that law. Until next time, which may be just later today. I just wanted to get a video with some of my thoughts out and kind of show what a bracket 1 deck can look like. And I think this being a bracket 1 deck, even if there's an argument that you could put against it, even if you're not convinced that this is a bracket 1 deck, like it's at least debatably a bracket 1 deck. It sure as shit is a bracket 3 deck. And I don't think this is what they're looking for. I don't think this is the sort of thing they had in mind. And it's not the sort of thing I had in mind. Like I said, I was hoping to build a... I thought, honestly, my thoughts were, I'm going to build Animar. But I'm just going to build Animar that just drops a bunch of, free morph creatures and makes Animar huge and then drops Eldrazi's into play, or Belby, or Rakdos Lord of Rights. I wanted to smash people to death with huge monsters. But there's just no reason to do that under the current rules. Which means I think they failed at the rules and they should fix the rules. It's a beta test. I understand that. But they need our feedback, and this is my feedback. Now, all of that being said, fellow budget pub stompers, do not play a deck like this into a casual pod full of players who are genuinely playing combat-based decks that they are thinking are just like level 1 or bracket 2 or bracket 3 even. This won't be fun for anybody. Just don't do it. I was going to say unless you're trying to prove a point. I guess the only person to play this against, a deck like this, if you see Gavin, if you see the rule people, the people that designed the brackets, absolutely sit down and say, I want to play bracket 1 with you. Outside of that, if you're not trying to send a message, if you're not trying to, it's not going to be fun. And it's kind of a dick move to sit down with a deck that, games the system. Now, this does game the system, but to be totally fair, I didn't do anything to this deck but build it. Then the brackets happened, and it was a bracket 2 right from the get-go. I didn't do anything. It was just automatically was listed as a bracket 2 deck. The only thing I did, I took 1 card out, literally 1 card. I took Flare of Duplication out. It dropped it from a 2 to a 1. I'm not quite sure why, but that's what happened. So even before I tried to game the system whatsoever, just using good deck building principles, I got a bracket 2 deck that absolutely could make the table dead on turn 4. Now, it's not going to. It's not supposed to. That's not what it's meant to do. That's not what you ought to do, even if you're playing it optimally. And it's not doing it with a 2-card combo. So that's Navinad. That's the Budget Pub Stomper. My thoughts on the brackets. Until next time, word to your mothers, brothers, sisters, lovers. East side until the day that I die. West side until the day that you die. And namaste, my nerd homies.